Rick 330. Here's an interesting one. Rick says Ohio against the world is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, considering they get top recruits and transfers. Really makes no sense. All right, Rick, that's a good one. Let me explain this from my perspective. How that's always hit me, and maybe it'll make a little more sense this way. It has way more to do with Ohio State as a football program. That to me is a rally cry about the state that we live in, the state that is referred to as living in an area called the Rust Belt in flyover country that people make fun of. It's a rallying cry that we take pride in where we're from, despite all the rest of them thinking it has nothing to offer. We love it. We love it. We don't want to be anywhere else. We love our family. We love our neighbors. We love our values, and we love our football. And we love our football program that everybody hates. And we love that they hate it. And we feed off that hate. And because of that, it's us against all of you. Ohio against the world. That's what that means to me. So I hope that makes a little more sense when you hear it from that perspective. I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name, a season of dreams.
So JUCK over with Menace to Sports.
And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champs, will be remembered for how they came out of that. And welcome into JUCK on Bucks, the weekend show. You know, I used to do these in, I don't know, the first maybe 6 months of the show, maybe a little longer, where I would just do a weekend show that didn't really follow my weekday format, where I have dedicated topics that are bullet pointed and extensively researched. And I just would come on and just kind of free flow. So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to come on and kind of free flow. There's a couple comments that a few rude people have made that I'd like to respond to. So we'll be getting into that today. I was looking back at the first year of the show. At this point in time, what was I talking about? And today, last year, the topic of conversation on the show was our offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien, was flirting with Boston College about potentially taking that job. And I couldn't believe it. Now, that's a pretty big what if game. What if that didn't happen? What if he didn't get that game or that gig over at Boston College and Bill O'Brien was the offensive coordinator of this 2024 Buckeye team? Big what if game there. I don't know. I do like the way it turned out, obviously, with the chipster, but we know that the chipster, a big commodity with the NFL now. Come out as, you know, maybe the number one candidate for the Houston Texans. Side note, the Houston Texans, a big team here in the Milletti house. My middle son is the big football fan and the younger one, but the middle son mostly. And he's been a Texans fan all his life. I don't know why. I don't know why he gravitated towards them. You know, most kids will gravitate, if it's not, you know, the home team, they'll gravitate to another team because of their uniforms or because they're winners. The Texans, whatever, they look fine. Their uniforms are fine. I don't think anybody'd say that's my favorite uniform. They certainly weren't winners. He can't tell me we have no ties to Texas in any way as a family. I don't get it. Now the Texans have CJ Stroud. They've got Cade Stover. I really like D'Amico Ryans. Like, they're a team I'll root for, you know, just to kind of root, I guess, to fit in with the rest of the family, I suppose. But I can't change my stripes, man. I'm a Browns fan. It is what it is. And I used to say that I failed as a parent with my kid with all this Texans gear. But let's be honest, I probably succeeded. He'll probably have a happier existence as an NFL fan than I ever did being a Texans fan. So I didn't force it down his throat. I didn't. I tried, I guess. He wasn't having it. Did not want to be a Browns fan. That was not cool. But we look at Chip Kelly. Chip obviously wanted to be with the Seahawks when he left when he was leaving UCLA. That was number one. So he wanted to go to the NFL before he wanted to be an offensive coordinator in college. So he comes to Ohio State. And I guess I'm just kind of nervous. Like, you wonder, you know, Ryan Day is his buddy, right? We know their extensive history together. you used to have Urban who would have that agreement with coaches that he would bring in, and the agreement was, I'll hire you, but you need to give me your word you're going to stay for 2 years. And that was best for both parties in most cases. If you were good enough to get hired away in 2 years, good. If you were good enough to get hired away in 1 year, that's great. You're a hot commodity, but you gave me your word you're going to stay for 2, and it worked. They stayed because you don't want to burn somebody in that community. It's a small community, especially a national championship winning coach. So it worked. I wonder if Ryan Day is taking that approach with his assistants. I don't know. I don't know if we've ever heard that or not. Part of me thinks about this in two ways. If Chip gets the opportunity to go to the NFL, I think that Ryan Day, I think that Chip wouldn't want to leave him. I think that Ryan Day would encourage him to do it because they're close like that, because that's his buddy and he wants him to do what's happy, what makes him happy. And the fact that they just won a national championship. It just all came together in this one special year for the two of them. If he wants to ride off into the NFL, I would think that Ryan Day would probably support that, pat him on the back. But Chip feels like more of an NFL guy to me. Not huge in recruiting, though he doesn't really need to recruit a ton. But he has been out there hustling lately. I've seen pictures all over him, out on the West Coast, down south, recruiting in this contact period before this one shuts down on Monday. So he's still hustling. But is he going to go? When he came in, it never felt like it was long-term to me. I remember I had this conversation with Dylan Davis, and Dylan thinks he thought it had legs. He thought it had staying power. He was thinking like 5 years. To me, this always felt like a 2 to 3 year thing. So I'm not going to be terribly surprised if he ends up leaving. But I feel like he's going to stay. I do. I think a lot of people aren't so worried if he does leave because Ryan Day is an offensive guy. What's the worst that happens? Maybe he doesn't get a big name, but then in that case, he just pivots and gets maybe a figurehead who is an up-and-comer who's going to run Ryan Day's offense. And he's still implementing the game plan, and he's always going to have his input in that. But maybe it's just more of a situation like that, and people aren't worried about it. I don't know, but I don't feel like there's a big panic. I would certainly hate to lose Chip because of what those two did together. And that last 4-game stretch of the season was just phenomenal. To be able to repeat that would be fantastic. But we'll see how it goes. But when we look at the top candidates for positions like offensive line coach, right? Like Justin Fry is being interviewed by the Bears. And usually one of the, I don't know, is there another offensive line coach position open in the NFL? If there is, those things tend to pick up momentum and he'll maybe get an interview somewhere else too. But what if he gets that job? And people were saying, well, who's the next candidate for the offensive line? I don't know. When you look at the most successful offensive line coaches, they're usually successful because they're at a winning program, and they're at a program that's usually another blue blood. Like those would be our list of candidates, right? All the best ones in the country. Who's in a situation like Jim Knowles where they're not happy, or they're not getting paid enough, or the program won't up their deal. We tried last year with, who was it? DeMarco Murray from Oklahoma. Last year, during the running back search, you were trying to pull from a blue blood program, DeMarco Murray from Oklahoma, to get him to come to Ohio State. Ultimately weren't able to get that done. Do you see the same deal with an offensive line coach? I know this. After the hires Ryan Day made last year, and you could say out of the 4 that he made, external hires, they're fantastic, but really only one of them was a true search hire. Carlos Loughlin. Carlos Loughlin wasn't first on his board, wasn't second on his board, wasn't third, but it was a true, went out, did his due diligence, talked to a bunch of people, and he made that hire where he was able to pull from another national championship competitor and bring them into Ohio State. A big deal. And how did it turn out? Wow. When you look at what Coach Locke did with those backs this year, they both ran different. Trey had the best year of his career. And then what he was able to do on the recruiting trail getting the local stud in Bo Jackson, then Isaiah West, who I think is a 3-down back, incredibly underrated, pulled him from Kentucky, and then getting Turbo, who, look, that was a flip. He got Turbo to flip from Bama, and getting 3 in a class alone is hard enough. Being able to get those 3 quality backs, just a tremendous job. So Coach Locke, smashing success by Ryan Day. Now, Matt Guerrieri, I think also was a smashing success, but it wasn't really the same type of deal. It was Jim Knowles' guy. He wanted him. Ryan Day said, all right, I like him too. Let's bring him in. And I think he has excelled above what they thought he was going to be. On the recruiting trail, he was able to get their number 1 safety on the board, Fahim Delane. That's a huge deal. Your first year in the program, you got the school's number 1 target. And then he gets Deshaun Watson, which I think was a really good evaluation, 4-star, but an underrated 4-star outside the top 300. And then Cody Haddad, who I think is going to be a player who's going to be a player, or we're going to see him transferring out in 2 or 3 years and be a player somewhere else because he can't see the field. One of the two, but he's a player. Then, of course, we look at Chip, being able to bring that in, obviously a no-brainer. Their history. What if that didn't work out? We saw the Bill O'Brien hire. I think it would have been pretty good with Bill O'Brien either way. And then you got James Laurinaitis. James Laurinaitis, who was already working with the linebackers at the school. That was the most obvious hire that he made. It seemed to take a while. I don't know how many other guys he was looking at for that. But remember, we didn't know at that point if he was going to hire a linebackers coach or not. That was the position that was opened up when he fired Parker Fleming as the special teams coordinator. Jim Knowles was coaching the linebackers. So we weren't sure which direction he was going to go there. Ends up making James Laurinaitis the linebackers coach. And all he's done is went and got his 2 top targets in Riley Pettijohn and TJ Alford, and also Eli Lee. So all 4 of those external hires last year, smashing success. And I think that the relationship that Guerrieri has with Caleb Downs is pretty special. They're 2 dudes who really like to nerd out on their film. I remember a story that Guerrieri was telling when Caleb Downs first came. He sat with Caleb Downs and watched every single snap with him that he played at Alabama in his freshman year. And during that film session that they had together, Caleb Downs was talking about an individual play. Like Guerrieri would bring up, what formation are you running here? And he would tell him not just what they were running, but exactly what they're about to watch in that play for every game. Savant style stuff from Caleb Downs, which is why he's so special. Now we're going to do this week. I went through at the suggestion of my buddy Tom, and I did the all Buckeye team of my lifetime. So my favorite lineup, choosing from every Ohio State team that I've ever watched with my own eyes. So I did that, and spoiler, Caleb Downs is on there. Like, that's just it. 1 year, he makes it. I won't tell you who he's with, but he makes it. We're going to do that this week. But the hires Ryan Day made for 2024, fantastic. So I think that I've just got faith he's going to get it right. Now, a lot of people saying, due to the fact that we're not hearing or seeing a whole lot of outside activity on the defensive coordinator front, it's looking more and more like an internal hire. Matt Guerrieri, Tim Walton in a co-DC role is what most people think that they got going here. I don't love anything. I just, I just like one boss in one role, right? That's what I like. But at the same time, I understand if you are going to choose one, Matt Guerrieri is probably the one you want to choose because he's been in this defense forever. He was like Knowles. It's kind of like his protege is how it's always felt. And he's really into that. Walt, who has been a defensive coordinator for 2 different NFL teams, certainly has done that, but it feels to me like he's just better with the guys. But you don't want to disrespect him because he's owed that respect. Now, he does have on his job description assistant head coach, so it's not like he's been disrespected in any way. He certainly has that on his title. So does he want that? If he wants that, I suppose you make him the co-DC. But, you know, you never know. I just hate two guys in a role where it's so imperative for them to be on the same page, and you just never know who's making the final call. I just, if that stuff's all defined and laid out ahead of time, whatever. Obviously, if it's one or the other, they're both going to have a ton of input in the plan, etc. But if that's the way they go, then I think what you've got is an immediate contender in 2026, depending on how the quarterback plays. If you choose to go with an outside hire, which I'm fine with as well, if you choose to go with an outside hire, I think what you're doing is you're saying, I won't even say that. I think what I'm feeling then as a fan is 2025 is a year that we are getting guys up to speed, young guys playing, but we're really not looking like contenders until 26. But I think you can be contenders again in 25 to make a deep run in the playoffs if you stick with this defense. So either way, if you make a home run hire that we all know is going to be great from outside the program, I'm willing to look. This is going to be a fun season regardless. We've watched basically the same core play for years now. We get to see the new core come up. So it's going to be fun regardless. I just think I would lower my expectations for year one of a new DC. Those expectations are we can repeat as champions with Guerreri. That's the way I feel about it. So curious on your thoughts about that there, guys. You know, we've gone through a whole lot of bashing as a fan base from both external and internal sources. It's something that really drives me nuts because so much of my identity, and I'll admit this sounds super cheesy, so much of my identity, my entire life has been tied up in the fact that I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm an Ohio State guy. Like that's who I am. If you break me down to the things that are most important in my life, man, it doesn't fall out of the top 5. You know what I mean? It's a big part of who I am. And the amount of we're different. We're passionate. I'm not somebody who thinks that every single fan base is the same, just different in size, meaning people hate Ohio State fans because there's so many of us. You see us everywhere, all over social media. And because of that, they think Ohio State fans suck. They're so annoying. They're so cocky. And in this case, what we saw with the Ryan Day and his family's treatment, they're just, the way they're talking about us. I do think that fan bases take on a certain personality based on the experiences they've had or the expectations they've had from their program. And there's definitely some arrogance in the Ohio State program fan base, the Alabama fan base, like programs that have had success at the highest levels tend to be arrogant. You still see that in the Notre Dame program. They've not won they've just won their first big time postseason game this year since the 80s. But that arrogance lingered, and there's some more stuff built into that with the Notre Dame fan base. But Ohio State fans definitely took it on the chin over how this season played out with Ryan Day since he lost the game, since there were so many people calling for his job after the game. Or I find more who were saying he needs to make a run or I'm out on him than we're saying I want him gone immediately. He shouldn't have made it to the press conference after the Michigan game. I think that was a much lower number of people than the folks who said, I want to see if he can make a run here. And if they, God forbid, lose to Tennessee, I'm done. I can't take it anymore. I think that was more the attitude, at least from the folks that I talked to and what I picked up on. But we all know that at that point, that game, that Tennessee game, is when Herb Street got on his grandstand and essentially called everybody who wanted the program to move on from the Ryan Day regime the lunatic fringe, which you and I, who are involved in this stuff on a daily basis, know that opinion was not an opinion held by the lunatic fringe. It was an opinion held by a large portion of the Ohio State fan base. But he was calling that portion of people the lunatic fringe. Now, I happened to catch this the other day. And Bruce Feldman, as you may or may not know, a longtime college football journalist, really respected in the business, from Southern California, somehow grew up an Ohio State fan, no family ties, just liked Ohio State, has been an Ohio State fan all his life. And because of that, I've always liked him. He's also a really good journalist, but he spent a week with the Day family, maybe not a full week, but he spent some time with the Day family when Nina Day's dad was staying with them after the Michigan game. And he had extensive talks with Nina Day, with RJ Day, with Nina Day's dad, and was going over some of the nastiness that they went through from that. Now, obviously, I don't condone a lick of that. I think that there should be zero connection or contact in any way with players negatively, with any player's family negatively, with any coaches or coaches' family negatively. I don't think that there needs to be any contact, nor should there be at any level other than seeing someone and saying great game. Like, I just don't feel there's ever a need to take it to that level. And I think it should be frowned upon. And I think for the most part, we all agree with that. But some of the stuff that was said to them takes it to a level that is so beyond acceptable in society, in any realm, like in any realm of society. And I think that it gets to a point where if there are people who would say some of the horrific things, and I'll just pull up that there's a Twitter account that had some of their tweets exposed. I'm not going to share the account name just because I was advised not to. But when you look at someone who would say something like this, there's some profanity here. Our head coach needs to take some advice from his father. His father, of course, committed suicide when Ryan Day was 8 years old. There is exactly one honorable way for that coward to respond to this game. Of course, he's talking about the same thing, suicide there. Ryan Day, there will be pitchforks and fire at your door when you return home if you mess this up. I promise you that. Ryan Day and his assistants hanging upside down here. If you're listening on podcast, hanging upside down from a ladder of sorts. I think if you are someone who says stuff like that, like in public, someone who has those thoughts and would say something like that, you're not the type of person who cares what anybody else thinks of you. You're not the type of person who's going to listen to reason. You're someone with a screw loose, is what my mom would say. I would say it in a much nastier way if I wasn't sitting here with a microphone in front of me. It's certainly not someone any of us would ever associate with, want to be associated with, and it's certainly the type of attitude that we all, I think, agree, I hope, don't want involved in something that we're involved with and passionate about. Like, I don't want that type of person in our fan base, our community. It's bothersome to see that. And you think about a father. You got your wife seeing stuff like that, scared to death. And the fact that you know that this doesn't happen if you're in another walk of life, another job. And you start doubting yourself, like, man, what did I get my family into? It's just terrible. I mean, there's not enough words to say about it. However, we, the fan base who pack the Rose Bowl, pack the Cotton Bowl, pack the national championship game, pack a 100,000 seat stadium and cheer for our Buckeyes and support them, and now literally pay the payroll in NIL payments. Somehow we have been lumped in with this type of behavior. And I cannot tell you how much I resent that, because any fair-minded person can separate that kind of psychotic behavior from, wow, these folks have incredibly high standards and want their very successful coach fired because he can't do this. Like, if you are someone who wanted Ryan Day fired, that's your prerogative. It doesn't make you crazy or psychotic. It's sports. The man makes $10 million a year. You're a sports fan. You donate to the athletic department. You donate to NIL funds. You have a right to hold your opinion, and it doesn't make you a bad fan for not supporting the man running the program. You support the program. And if you want to change in the leadership of the program, that doesn't make you any less of a fan. It doesn't. There is not blind loyalty to the man, any of them. There is blind loyalty towards the program. So if you're a portion, and I've seen some of you guys in the comments who feel bad about the way you felt at the time, yes, of course, hindsight makes you feel differently. And that's why, there was a lot of folks who said, listen, guys, let's pump the brakes and see how it plays out. It's part of fandom to have a trigger like that. That's why we love sports. It's not real life. It's the escape from real life. We have reactions and emotions that don't have the kind of consequences like they would if we were in real life. That's part of the fun. We certainly aren't the first fan base who would have wanted a very successful coach fired. If you think that more fans than not wanted Ryan Day fired at that point, we certainly wouldn't be the first who were irrational. But yes, there's a certain part of sports and irrationality that goes hand in hand, and it's part of the appeal. What's not is clearly what I just showed you. And I very much resent anyone who has put that type of person and painted us, just normal folks who love our Buckeyes and have very high standards, painted us with that brush. I resent the hell out of it. Now I'm going to show you something here.
Eventual. Now, what do we take away from this? What do you take away from the Ohio State fan base? And that, I'm not painting it as a one big brush, but that sounds like there's a lunatic fringe, which is exactly what Kirk Herbstreit said and got eviscerated by a lot of Buckeye fans for saying such a thing.
What he's saying, when he's asking Bruce right there, he's asking, so what does that say then? What do we take away from this? Bruce just highlighted the kind of tweets that I just showed you. Bruce just highlighted to him the stories of what Nina Day and RJ Day and the two little girls had to go through. He just highlighted that. Then Eisen says, Herbstreit talked about this lunatic fringe and he got eviscerated for it. Herbstreit was not talking about those psychopaths. Herbstreit was talking about fans who wanted Ryan Day fired as the lunatic fringe. The lunatic fringe was not a way to describe psychopaths who would harass that man's family or make threats to his family. But he wants to tie that in with Ohio State because he's a Michigan guy. And using a huge platform like that to do that, I think it's despicable. I think it's outright despicable. Now, remember, the lunatic fringe that Herbstreit was talking about was folks who wanted Ryan Day fired. Now, in the same podcast, this hypocrite comes back and says this.
The resumes are going to be flawed because you have that many more. It's not 4 anymore.
The
it's
national
12.
champion lost 2 games, including one of the worst losses by that team in the history of their rivalry. Honestly, one of the Michigan team that beat them was one of the, as you know, more troubled,
Limited, for
limited
sure.
versions of Michigan. But so you need
you
to
can
throw.
So as he just describes how poor that loss was, at the same time, in the same episode, highlights Herb Street's lunatic fringe, calling folks that wanted the day regime out because they can't win that game. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. But I am damn sick of having. I honestly believe that there are people in every passionate fan base, a certain sect of folks who are in any walk of life, in any grocery store you walk into, there's going to be a certain percentage. Any stadium you're in, there's going to be a certain percentage. Unfortunately, there are just some sick puppies out there, man. And they're going to be in every group. And I am just sick of these people being thrown in with us. It makes me mad as hell. And they don't seem to want to let it die. We see it over and over again. And I'm all for, yeah, tell your story, Nina Day. Get it out there that we won't accept this anymore as a society. I'm all good with that. What I'm not good with is them trying to take these folks that would do something like that and throw it onto us. It's not cool. It's disrespectful as hell. And it fires me up, man. It really does. So anyway, on to the next thing. And again, something else that that I want to show you this. We'll start off here. So that right there is behind me on the wall. Now you probably can't see that license plate. I think it's kind of covered up from the camera. So that's a license plate I had on my car for a lot of years. H8TSUN. Hate the school up north. Hate the state up north. Hate it all. And that acronym is a tribute to Woody Hayes that I had on the car. Now, the other day, I got this comment from somebody. In this comment, from Greg before 19, Greg says, okay, may you please stop using the letter M in the word Michigan. Diehard Buckeye fans know better. Every time you say that nasty word, I cringe. It's Michigan, not that other. Thank you for learning something today. Now, I don't really like the way people call out other fans unless it's someone who's clearly not a fan, who's posing. It's always something that's bothered me. And as you know, there are certainly levels to this. I've talked about it many times on the show. You are the 0.002% watching this show. And what I mean by that is you got those big polls of how many fans are in each fan base, 11 million Buckeye fans and things like that. Well, included in that 11 million, the majority of those are folks who you ask them, do you root for a college football team? Maybe they're from Ohio. They say, yeah, I'm a Buckeye fan. That's the majority of those numbers. Then you've got the hoodie wearing fan who is a little more vocal about it, but they don't really pay attention to what happens. They're just a Buckeye fan. Okay, cool. Then you got the every Saturday watcher. Then you've got the every Saturday watcher who follows really hard during season. Then you got the folks who read year around and follow every game and could tell you most of the players' names on the team. Then you got 4 levels from that person to us, right? The ones who know everything about the program, follow everything, watch shows year round, and even know the personalities that cover the team. Like, that's you. That's me. The 0.002%. And I got that number by looking at the largest channels in Ohio State media, how many subscriber counts they have, and dividing that into the total number of Ohio State fans. 0.002%. That's you and me. We're the psychos, and I can say it because I'm one of you. We're the ones that live and die by this, follow it year round, know every assistant coach and usually their marital status, number of children. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know it all because we love it and we can't get enough of it. Now, that's not always a healthy thing, but it is what it is, and that's who we are. So when I see someone come at me like that, it really ticks me off, especially in a condescending way. but he's not the first person that said that to me. Usually, they say it in a bit of a joking manner, but since he come at me like this, I'm going to educate him. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And in the 80s and in the 90s and in the 2000s, myself, the head coach of the football team, the players on the football team called our rival Michigan. That's what we called them. Now, we'd tell stories about Woody Hayes and you know, how cool it was that went for 2 because he couldn't go for 3, pushed the car across the border because he didn't want to give tax money, and hated him so much he wouldn't even say their name. And sometimes the week of the game, we wouldn't say their name. And every once in a while, you'd find a Buckeye fan who held that year round. He wouldn't even say their name. But the majority of the time, it was an endearing story we told about our enigmatic coach who loved nothing more than Ohio State football and hated nothing more than that state, that school, TSUN, Woody Hayes. But the rest of us, we just said Michigan, man. That's it. Now, my favorite players, Mike Vrabel, Mike Doss growing up, just Michigan, man. That's what they called him. That's what I called him. Enter Urban Meyer. Urban gets to the Woody and he wants to do it a different way. Don't you dare wear blue into that building. Don't you dare use a blue pen. And buddy, if you utter the name of that team up north, there's going to be hell to pay the piper. So what do we see at this point? Buckeye fans love it. They eat it up. TSUN kind of falls by the wayside, and TTUN becomes the thing, the team up north. And it starts being widespread adopted. Now, I'm 32, 33, 34 years old at the time. Been a diehard fan all my life, Greg. And if you were someone at that point that adopted that in your daily life during that era and started saying the team up north instead of the dirty word, I'm fine with that because I don't care what you say in your daily life, but I can just speak for myself. I don't do anything to fit in. Nothing. It's just something I live by. And you know that there's nobody that respects this rivalry more than me. I'm the guy who was out here actively fighting that we can't allow that game to mean less. That was me in a year where it would have been convenient for me to say, it means less. I don't care because I've got Michigan people coming at me every day about our fake national championship. It would obviously be a nice little play for me to say that, but I'm not gonna because I won't compromise my values. One of those is I never do things to fit in. And at 33, to change my vernacular felt disingenuous to change what I called them. So I wasn't going to do it. And I've got no problem if anybody did. No problem at all. But I wasn't going to because you know what I enjoy even more is being able to look them in the eye when they call us Ohio, which wasn't adopted at their program as the standard of what they called us as a pejorative until Brady Hoke, a coach they hate. Now, we at least love Urban, who popularized this to be said throughout the state, throughout Ohio State fandom. They hate Brady Hoke. But they took this corny Ohio thing from Brady Hoke and adopted it all throughout their fandom and say it to us as a pejorative. It's even spread around to other fan bases, what they call us. And it's so stupid. We've got merchandise that says Ohio all over it. I mean, it's just so corny. But what I love is that I know they never said it until Brady Hoke, and now it's just their lingo that they've adopted. And I make fun of them for it. Now, I couldn't do that if I myself called them Michigan all my life, and then in 2015 decided, all right, now's the day. I'm never going to say that word again. That would be disingenuous, and I can't do it. So there's your lesson, Greg, on why myself, Mike Vrabel, Mike Doss,
Ohio State or Michigan,
and Jim Tressel, and many other older Buckeye fans just call our rival Michigan. That's your education. By the way, that's strike one. One more, you're banned. Here's this guy. Brian Kelly, 1732. Brian Kelly. Now, what are the odds this wise guy has the name of the coach in college football I hate the most? You won a national title and you still can't get Michigan out of your minds. Little brother mentality. The audacity of Brian Kelly to refer to Ohio State as little brother. I would love to hear how he feels he has the grounds to say that. I would love it. Maybe it's because he's too stupid, like this moron.
Go Blue, 4-0. Go Blue, baby, 4-0. Go Blue, baby, 4-0.
Ryan Day, a nice guy to stop and take a picture outside a steakhouse, walking into dinner with this guy, and he sets him up to say 4-0. The stupidity of these people. 4-0? What does that even mean? That's not his record against Michigan. That's not his record against Michigan, but I see so many of them saying 4-0. What does that mean to them? Do they really think that's his record? I think they do. It's 4 in a row. It's not 4-0. He's not 4-0. He's been the coach 6 years. You do the math, dummy. At any rate, 4-game winning streak is a lot. How many 4-game winning streaks have we had in our lives, Greg? Ohio State's beaten Michigan. Like, how far do you want to go back? Because we can just go for our lives. And I know for a fact that in your life, Ohio State has a winning record against you. I know it for a fact, no matter how old you are. We could take this to a court of law. What grounds does Greg have to call Ohio State little brother? You would get laughed out of the courtroom. Laughed out of the courtroom. And I'm laughing at you just as much as I'm laughing at this kid who says 4-0 in front of Ryan Day, which, by the way, Ryan Day went to say something back to him and he knew it, but he wouldn't stop and listen because he was too chicken shit to listen.
4-0, let's go, Blue, baby! Hey. Woo! Out of way, Ryan Day!
See? Ryan Day tries to say something, he's not going to listen. He's not going to listen because he's scared to look a man in the eye after he talks his shit. Typical. Extremely typical. Mr. No Bunny Zone, not a fan of the bunnies, says Stallions would kidnap Michigan players and keep them in his basement if he could, and that's absolutely right. Rick 330, here's an interesting one. Rick says Ohio against the world is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, considering they get top recruits and transfers. Really makes no sense. All right, Rick, that's a good one. Let me explain this from my perspective. How that's always hit me, and maybe it'll make a little more sense this way. It has way more to do with Ohio State as a football program. That, to me, is a rally cry about the state that we live in, the state that is referred to as living in an area called the Rust Belt in flyover country that people make fun of. It's a rallying cry that we take pride in where we're from, despite all the rest of them thinking it has nothing to offer. We love it. We love it. We don't want to be anywhere else. We love our family. We love our neighbors. We love our values, and we love our football. And we love our football program that everybody hates. And we love that they hate it. And we feed off that hate. And because of that, it's us against all of you. Ohio against the world. That's what that means to me. So I hope that makes a little more sense when you hear it from that perspective. But appreciate you guys for the comments, as always. Keep them coming. And this week we've got some, we got a couple of recruiting episodes to do. We had a big offer go out today to CJ Sana. CJ Sana, a linebacker, local kid. We'll talk about him and the potential that we may actually get a 3 Ohio linebacker class in 2026. I think we're going to. That's going to be fantastic. And we'll start off going over the defensive class. I was going to get into that today, but I thought, let's kick that off for an episode next week because I felt like a chatterbox. So there it is. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining me on the weekend show. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bucks out. And then that person might go out and totally redeem themselves, and you come out looking like a bit of a jerk. Justin Fry is interviewing with the Chicago Bears.